As you know, as per Senate Bill 52, that requires our county commissioners to pass a resolution as to whether we will permit, partially permit, or restrict these large wind and solar farms within our township. Large wind and solar farms being everything from 5 to 50 megawatts and 50 megawatts and above. Our county commissioners in Ashtabula have asked all the township trustees to pass a resolution within their township. We've discussed this a couple times at recent meetings. We may have actually, this isn't something that Shane and I typed up with our legal expertise. This is actually from the county commissioner's office. There's 3 resolutions here that they sent us samples of. They said we should work from these resolutions. This resolution is and I will just read the title out loud. We're going to be signing one of these 3 resolutions. This one is a resolution expressing support for Colebrook Township as a preferred area for utility scale wind and solar development throughout the entire township. So this resolution would permit it throughout the entirety of Colebrook Township. This resolution is a resolution expressing support for preferred areas for utility scale wind and solar development within Colebrook Township, Ashtabula County, Ohio. This would be a partial restriction and partially permitted throughout the township. We would have to have this accompanied with GIS mapping, breakdown of the township, how it was going to be permitted versus restricted, etc. The third resolution is a resolution requesting that the Ashtabula County Commissioners declare Colebrook Township, Ashtabula County, Ohio, a restricted zone for utility scale wind and solar projects, each of which requires 2 out of 3 trustee signatures. We will then be sending these off and submitting them to the county commissioners. They asked us to do this by September 1st, which I believe is next Tuesday. So that's why we discussed it briefly at our last couple of meetings, and I think it's kind of has been discussed more frequently as this time has come when people have bumped into each other. But we wanted to get people together today. We will vote. I went to, and I think you were there as well. I went to New Line's meeting last night just to kind of see. A lot of towns near us have restricted that. We still vote our own. We still get to vote as our own township. Is there anybody here that would like to speak up in favor of having the development of the wind and solar farms, the large wind and solar farms in our township?
I'm not going to say, which way I'm going to go with.
Sure. No, and none of you guys have to, by the way.
Well, so I'm Terry Moody, so I don't think Mr. Bailey knows who I am. But we have just come back from Kansas, and we took our time coming back, and we stopped at a lot of places. And I know I was pretty brazen. It didn't take much for me to walk up and knock on doors. And we stopped at a lot of different places. And it wasn't just Ohio. We stopped in Kansas, Indiana, and Ohio. And we talked to a lot of different people. We talked to people who signed leases, people who did not sign leases, people who signed the Good Neighbor lease. We stood underneath of the wind turbines. I will not go for solar panels. I will not do those. They are the ugliest, the most ridiculous things I've ever seen, and they take up way too much of our green land. I will not support that in any fashion.
Not to interrupt you, Terry, the Apex company that
Yes.
is entertaining that they are
Right.
0 solar panels.
Right, I know that.
Yeah.
I know that. I'm just saying my
Yeah, sure,
opinion,
sure.
because those say solar.
They do apply to both, yes.
Right,
Yeah.
and I'm totally
Sure.
against solar panels. And when we talked to everybody, we were going through areas where solar panels on one side of the road, wind turbines on the other. Oh my gosh, I cannot say enough negative about the solar panels. Now the wind turbines, their roads, their driveways, oh my gosh, they put our township roads to shame. We went through one area and we were talking to the people, and we went up to her, knocked on the door. She comes out, this lady comes out, and she's like, I wasn't married into the family at that point, but go talk to the neighbor across the street. So she stands there and talks to us for quite a while, and then the neighbor comes out to put something in the mailbox. She takes us over, introduces us to the neighbor. That neighbor didn't go back to the house fast enough, so her husband comes out. About that time, the first one's husband and uncle come back from the field. And so there for an hour. And they are talking about their township roads and how their township did a great job of negotiating their contracts with their developer. County did not do such a good job. Their township roads are in better condition now than they were before the project went in. They did have to come in and they tore up the roads, they chunked them up, put them back into gravel, and then they came back in and re-asphalt them. The people that we talked to, even the ones that did not sign leases, they're like, we don't even notice them here now. I mean, we didn't know anybody, we just picked people at random. And their only negative thing is the solar panels. People are saying, well, they're so noisy. Well, we stood underneath them, and it sounds like we're standing in their fields. And they're like, oh, just go in that field, don't bother. They won't say anything to you. And they sure didn't. It sounds like the ocean. And I'm like, oh, everybody wants to go to the ocean. Well, I don't, because I don't like water that much. But, it sounds like the waves of the ocean. And last night we were at the Run to the Shore cross country meet. And I'm like, Chris, listen, it sounds like wind turbines. And when the waves were coming, when the water was coming in, and the wind, that's what it sounded like. When these people were like on some of the first projects, and the one was like, yeah, I probably should have had a better lease. But I just kind of let him go across my land. Yeah, it probably wasn't the smartest thing I did. And then we had to fight about fixing our tile lines. Well, we've already been through that with oil companies. Once bitten, twice shy. We're not going that route again. And he's like, yeah, I would recommend that you have somebody local fix your tile lines, because they tried to run water up it. I'm like, yeah, I've been that route once before, we're not doing that again. We have a lot of lessons that we've learned in the past. And, I think we need to take those forward and keep those in mind. And, that's what the attorneys are for. And we just need to keep that in mind. When we asked them, like, well, what do you think about this? And one guy said, well, what about, because you have to have the flashes on it for the airport. He goes, oh, they're like fireflies. Get used to them, they're like fireflies. We're like, oh, okay. We asked, well, so what do you think about the flicker, shadow flicker? They're like, yeah, it happens, but it's not that bad. It happens for a little bit and then it's gone. They've had these for a long time. They're like, you don't really notice them. It's like those cell phone towers that we have sitting out here on Ray's property, or clear up on the corner or wherever. You get used to them. You don't even really notice them. And I guess I don't want somebody telling me that I can't do something with my land. That's my biggest thing. Whether I'm going with them or not, Grace and I just had this big discussion tonight while we were doing chores. One moment we're like, yes. One moment he's like, no, I'm not sure. That's a 50-year lease. That's a long time. We haven't signed anything. And, one day you're going for it, one day you're not. But green energy, we have a lot of road frontage. Our setbacks. There's a lot of things that people need to put in their leases. Now, whether some of those people put it in their leases or not, I don't know. Because Apex isn't coming forward with what they need to come forward with for me.
As far as information or?
Oh yeah, with like, I want this, and I want this. And they won't give it to me, so we're going to write more. And, that's it. When it comes time, we did the oil company. Money isn't that important for what you're gonna get. And for where we're sitting, at best, we get one. At best. Because of setbacks. So to me, and you get your one-time fee for your transmission line, my family really doesn't know. But I don't want to be told that I can't do something with my property that I have paid for. And I lived and breathed and sweat blood and tears on that property. That's my thing.
Did you have another company that they were with out there? I'm just curious.
Let me stop so many places. I mean, it's a 14-month drive to Kansas, and we came back the back roads. I mean, literally, we would literally take the back roads, and I'm sure my husband was not really happy with us with me by the time we got back, but, I mean, we would literally, like, oh, there's a wind turbine, we're taking that road, and we would aim for the wind turbine. We came up on one road, and the guy's like, so, how much rain did you get? And we're like, we haven't been home yet, So, I couldn't tell you which one
Yeah,
was
just
which
curious.
one. But we were, like I said, we were in Kansas, Indiana, and Ohio. So, I tried to find them on the map, but I can't remember which ones they were. So.
Thanks, Derek. Sharon?
Okay, so I just drove back from Texas, and my family has one not far from them, and they hate it. But it's actually a wind farm that has 150 of them on it. And my one cousin used to be oil well man. He said if he had the opportunity, he would never do that. It's not on their property, but they said with,
Are they all in the wake? Are they designed in the wake?
yes, they are. And he said it's very loud, and he said their electric bill actually went up. It did not go down.
Well, yeah, because they have to, part of the cost is going to be building the infrastructure, and that gets passed to everybody.
Right,
And the other thing with the turbines is, you could sign up, but one might not be put on your property because of how they need to space it out.
right.
That's the other thing, so you sign up, and you get the initial setup fee or whatever. So there's a lot of risks involved, or,
Yeah.
I mean, we need energy at some point, just what's the best way? I don't know the answer
Right.
to that.
Well, I can just tell you, my cousin Kurt is a bachelor, and his electric bill is like almost $300 a month down there. So, I mean, I don't know what the comparison is, because I never asked what it was before, because, I mean, they've lived down there for 40 years now. So, but, because I just happened to mention that we were gonna be having a meeting about it, and he's like, oh my God, you guys don't wanna do that. So, I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Anybody else?
I do have a question. What happens to the people that already signed up?
If we were to restrict it, is that what you mean? I've been talking about that with a few people. I guess if you've already cashed a check, you keep it, and if it's restricted, I guess that contract is void. Please don't take this with certainty. I've heard from a couple, that people I consider reliable, that Apex has, just because of all the no resolutions and all the other townships around, as far as I know, Windsor is the only township that, we're getting near the deadline. I'd say most of them have passed a resolution by now. Windsor's the only one I know of that is permitted these. Every other one is restricting them. I think Pierpont's a bit hung up right now with like a a split decision. Pardon me, but I hope you get to keep the money. I don't, Terry, I live across from the cell phone towers.
If we had a wind turbine, it would directly affect you.
Correct. Oh, and then, if these were, I can appreciate the technology a little bit, and if these were 150-foot tall wind turbines, I think we're talking an entirely different animal than something taller than most of the buildings in downtown Cleveland. If we put one of these in Colebrook, you will see it as you come over the hill in Windsor on 322. I mean, from 10, 15 miles back, that will be the first thing you see. But I part of me agrees with that. I have land that's been in my family longer than any of us has been alive. And I don't love being told what to do with that, but we didn't decide to tell them that was brought on by our very conservative state legislature that passed Senate Bill 52 saying this is not up to landowners anymore, this is up to county commissioners, which agree with it or disagree with it, that is what they passed, so and our commissioners have passed on it.
You guys heard of anybody else pursuing it in the area?
Other energy companies?
Yeah.
I haven't. I mean, the only name I've heard is the Apex name, and that's that's why I stepped in and said, I know they weren't doing any solar. He told us that at the last meeting. He goes, we're not doing one solar panel, you know, out of
Right.
300 megawatts, we're doing
But
all
we
wind.
have it in there, so.
And these are the, yeah, these
And
apply
that just
to
doesn't
wind and
mean
solar,
that-
yeah, right,
any
right.
others.
Well, and this, you know, I think it was Brian Edelman in New Line last night that said, you know, well, we're restricting these, and it came up that, you know, they had also heard that, I think Mark Stringfellow said that he had heard that they've packed up camp and are no longer interested just because of, you know, spending too much money on something that's not gonna come to fruition is what kind of sounds like they feel. But he basically said that, you know, they have no, you know, there's been not a lot of people that, I guess, you know, outright fought for them. That the issues they had were with people that didn't want, you know, neighbors of large landowners that maybe didn't want them or something like that. So, but like I said, the reason why we're taking this, you know, considering this very seriously is there are families in this town that stand to make money off of it. You know, there are. You know, whether it be problematic for them down the road, there are. And like you said, I think, you know, I half suspect that nobody's in love with a 600 or 700 foot turbine on their property, but when a company offers you this amount of money for a contract over X amount of years, you listen. You absolutely listen. And, you know, heck, maybe you cashed a check and you never hear from them again. You know, which
That's a 7-year contract at the most, is what we signed. We
Okay.
actually signed it.
and you know, and thank you. I lost my train of thought from there. That came up last night in New Line. They could be back a few years from now. You know, it could be a different company. You know, they'll give us some time. Maybe technology changes a bit. Maybe they hope that the outlook of the towns change a bit, and they'll try again, or a different company will. Or maybe it'll be all solar this time. You know, I don't know. Or maybe we never hear from them again in our lifetime. It's hard to tell.
My preference as a resident would be, that ultimately it's gonna decide to the voters.
What was that?
Down to the voters.
Yes.
I prefer leaving it to any individual in any township, you know, that's the big ask for anybody. For or against, or neutral, I rather, you know, I've seen some chatter where like if everybody votes no on the resolutions, that it could eventually go to the voters. I don't know if that's true or not, you see, there's so much misinformation out there, pros and cons, I really don't know. That'd be as a resident, that way it's put to the voters, and then ultimately they decide versus on 3 individuals. But unfortunately, we're not there today. So, that would be my preference.
Anybody else?
Well, I too would not want anybody telling me what to do with my land. But part of the reason, like, most of us are here is because of the area and the farming and the countryside, the birds, the wildlife. I mean, I don't know that there's a good solution to any of it, but for me, it would just be a hard pass. I wouldn't want to do that to anybody around me, and I don't want like a monstrosity like that around me.
I've talked to a lot of people, you know, in the last 2-3 months. I didn't have a big interest in wind and solar farm information, you know, 3-4 months ago until we, you know, had Senate Bill 52 was brought to our attention and the commissioners asked us to pass this. But that was a lot of what, you know, quite simply what I do hear from people is I just, they're so big I don't want them in town. That is what I hear a lot of. And I hear a lot of what Terry said that, you know, we've had land, this has been Vin's property for 125 years, you know. It's our decision to do what we want with it. So, anybody else?
Yeah, the only thing I had was that, you know, our last meeting, you know, I told them that I wanted an address, the closest one that I could go and see that they own. I wanted to talk to the homeowners, I wanted to listen to it, and nobody ever called. That kind of puts a bad taste in your mouth when they can't even call you to say, here's the local one, go see it, go talk to the people, you know, and they didn't do that.
Right, and like I said, they didn't get back to me with stuff that I needed from them.
Yep, so if they would have reached out and I could have been able to go talk to you, maybe it would have persuaded me to vote that direction. But since they didn't even want to go that direction, they didn't want to help persuade me, then yeah, I don't know.
And honestly, he was a little wishy-washy when we asked for references.
difficult job to thread that needle.
But I mean, coming into something,
Sure.
something like that,
Sure.
you're prepared. It's like going for a job, you're prepared with
Prepared to answer
references.
the difficult
So
questions,
to me,
yeah.
they should have had all that in place, so there was no question, and it might have started to build up a trust. But to me, he was very wishy-washy, and I didn't like that, and I thought, cause it was like, that was weird. And not a very transparent presentation.
Jeff, you know, we spoke at length with, it's not so much upfront, it's the, what happens if they break, what happens at the end. You know, we talked about they have to put up a bond for decommission of them. Did you ever find any
I
information on that?
didn't hear back from the commission. I think they're inundated up to their eyeballs with calls and emails right now this last week or two. You know, I had a couple conversations, and I don't know if anybody has some legal expertise and can shed any light on this. You know, each wind turbine that goes up has to have a bond in place for the deconstruction and decommissioning of these, you know, X amount of years from now at the end of the contract. I think Rob G, who was here, said that it was updated like every 5 years for interest, and that bond is then held in our county auditor's office. You know, that bond is for a time 30 years in the future when this needs disassembled and disposed of. How good is that bond if the company went out of business 15 years prior to that? You know, I assume when a company files Chapter 11 bankruptcy, bond, I don't know, and probably should ask an attorney. I assume bonds are liquidated to become part of that bankruptcy. Anybody?
I would think the same thing.
And I'm guessing, admittedly, but it doesn't, the bond issue, you know, if somebody comes and they, you know, you were probably bonded at one time, you know, when you had your construction business, you were doing jobs that, you know, were pricey and stuff, right? I mean, that's very common, but, you know, this is something that's 30 years down the road, and I think he said in the neighborhood of $20 million or something like that, if I remember correctly, so. I don't know how valid or helpful those are to the landowner, if there's issues with it down the road. And something else we had discussed, that I tried to reach out to the commissioners about that I didn't hear from was, we've heard a little bit of rumblings, is our infrastructure in this area even able to, you know, become compatible with the wind and solar, the alternative energy? Are there gonna be some infrastructure upgrades that would then be passed on to us, you know, via increased kilowatt per hour or something? And I wasn't able to hear back from the commissioners, and I probably emailed them about 2 weeks ago. I think they're just inundated, you know, and unfortunately right now with a ton of calls from townships, from citizens, from people at the state level, from the energy companies. I'm sure they're struggling to get back to people a bit, but I don't.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
Did you ask the question, how long they've been in place?
Good question.
Yeah, anywhere from 5 to 15.
They've already been there that long? Okay.
No issues with breaking down, fixing parts, everything?
No, one of them had said that one of the props had broken, and they said, well, when originally they were told it would fly, you know, away, it fell right down to the ground. And then as we were driving around, there was like brown spots on it. I asked Chris, I said, what is that, rust? And he's like, I don't know. So then as we were talking to the different people, they're like, oh no, that's from the oil. When it goes to leak, it just comes straight down the turbine. And
The rust was on the shaft or
it
something?
looked like
The column?
rust, but it was the oil
Okay.
leaking. And the one guy said, well, it takes one of the maintenance, or one of the tech guys, or one of the land agents or whatever, said, oh, it's only like 150 gallons of oil up there. Well, when the tech guy came, he said, no, that's 350 gallons of oil up in that turbine thing. And so, you know, that was and then they're like, yeah, we don't really understand why sometimes they're working and sometimes they're not. Well, that's because sometimes the grid needs more energy and sometimes they don't. Or something, they said, a lot of times ours aren't running because they were down for maintenance. Or they're just not running because they don't need the power.
Sure. Do you know if they still got paid? I know.
Yep, they still got paid.
Okay.
Did we ask about that too?
Yeah, because that was what Rob G, I don't know if his name was Rob G or Rob G, but that's what he said, that, you know, we pay $7,500 per megawatt, regardless if it's up and running or producing power or not. You know, and I've heard also contrary to that they've struggled with keeping up with payments. I think it was an article out of the News Herald, or I forget where I read it, but it was, they've struggled to keep up with payments. point where actually some landowners, I believe, had liens put on their land because.
Right, but they did talk about that, and, but they said, you know, once we got that all, you know, it worked out, we got it all settled, and, like, it worked out. I mean, he said it did take us long to get that settled, once we realized what was going on, they worked with us and got it settled, so.
What were the size of the turbines? Are they as big as they're proposed here, or?
Not quite as big. They were like,
There's a GIS, or there's a US Geological Survey energy site you can go to, and it'll show you, you can click, and you can adjust by height. The tallest ones I can find on here are 180 meters, which is like just shy of 500 feet. Most of them are approximately 390 to 410. They're 118 meters to 121 meters. But there is a few pockets that are above the red would represent like the 180 meter.
You would be in that neighborhood then, from what he said.
It'd be a little bit higher than this. The highest one this goes to is 200 meters. So
Well, that's clearly 600 feet.
it's yeah, they'd be a little taller than the tallest one that I could find on that.
Well, a good comparison is if you're out on 90 and you see Lincoln Electric, that's 430 feet. So put another 200 feet, that's what we would have in Colebrook. Just one. So if you know how big that turbine is, add another 200 feet.
I've tried to like, in my mind, like 700
And you can see that from how far away,
Yes,
and you see that 430-foot one from how far away, add another 200 feet.
When the air base does like their flight patterns in the summertime, they would like have to really adjust.
So,
Because I think they fly lower than that, than 700 feet.
Oh, those like
Wait, from the
C-130,
air base,
those
yeah.
C-130 Army, yeah, they absolutely do.
Yeah.
They've been flying over my house my whole lifetime. They're
Yeah,
all, they're 500
yeah,
feet
they
all the
would have to
time.
like adjust that.
Is that what you were
But
saying,
I'm
was
sure,
500
like,
for them? Anybody else?
a Goodyear Blimp was just flying over 2 weeks ago, very low.
Like you say, it like flew into an air.
Well, no, he
turbine or
was-
something. I was like,
he
wow,
was flying
doesn't go
around
very
here.
fast, you should have seen that coming.
I mean, the Youngstown Airport constantly
Yeah.
has, constantly.
Shane, Joe, anything to add?
I have a question.
So, sorry, Sharon.
That's okay. I know, I'm in the back, I'm sure you can't see me.
That's all right.
So if the other areas surrounding us have all declined this, how does that work
Good
with
question.
getting something from A to B?
I can't imagine that would leave them with any interest in Colebrook, to be honest. You know what I mean? I know for a fact Orwell, New Line, Rome, I've spoken to people from each of those. I don't know anybody from Wayne, but I see that they've restricted it. The only town, like I said, the only township I know that's permitting them is Windsor. And as we know, we've spoken of a couple times, they weren't really looking at anything on the western half of our county. It was pretty much like western side of Colebrook this way up to like, from what I understand, they have to get to a substation in Monroe Township, I believe, to tie into where they need
I just
to.
get the bottom,
Bottom
southwest, east
wedge.
corner of the 9 townships down there, 3 across and 3 out.
Yeah, so to answer your question, I don't know if we would be of any value, you know, even if we said yes to this, if we would be of any value, because I don't know if you were to build a turbine or anything to, I don't know how you get the power out of Colebrook if you can't travel through any of the other townships.
Right.
Because that's what their resolution has stated, is it's restricted.
With all that said, though, the county commissioners can override us.
I feel like if they were going to say that our whole county, being that the county is overwhelmingly restricting these, I feel like if they wanted to permit them, they would have done it a while back. There's no way, there's no way they're gonna, they want to be I don't see any of us as career politicians. I know some of our commissioners, and that's their career. They wouldn't do that to our they wouldn't do that to their constituency. They wouldn't, I don't have any feeling that they would ask the trustees to pass this and then do something inverse of what the majority of the townships have passed.
I agree, I'm just putting it out there, just,
knowing
it's not
their-
tax dollar money.
just
And I don't, yes, this would create some, if half a dozen families in town, make $50,000 extra a year, that is more revenue that they generate, and that is more tax income to the schools, but I don't feel it's, and you're the accountant, I can't imagine it's the $70 million that would go to Ashtabula County Schools that I've heard mentioned, I think it was Rob G in a newspaper article said that up to $70 million might go to Ashtabula County Schools. I don't know how you come up with that number and if it's at all realistic.
The other thing too, they mentioned that the land could be changed from CAUV to commercial, which would.
We never were able to get a final answer on that.
Right. So that would, so the farmers said, I don't know how it's like your home, you carve out an acre for your home, off of your acres, so if you had a 100-acre farm lot and you use an acre,
Which brings me back to a good lease, because a good lease, you can carve out that piece that the turbine is on.
So I get
So, I mean,
out.
see, that's what I'm saying, it depends on how the lease
Oh,
is
if this
written.
ever came to fruition and landowners did sign a lease, they should absolutely speak with an attorney, not just their a
Their
divorce
local,
attorney,
right.
somebody that specializes in energy
Well, supposedly
leases.
they have, from what I've heard.
Yeah, I would highly advise that
But
to
they're-
anybody that was considering.
I'm not sure they spoke with, what is it, agricultural wind energy specialists.
Yeah, something
They're
like
very
that,
hard to
exactly, yeah,
find.
not,
Believe me, they're very hard to find.
so,
I've looked high and low, found most.
yeah, it's a niche for sure.
Yeah.
Probably more
I should have
prominent.
gone into that
In the
business.
Texas area, I'm sure in the Texas area with all the oil, I'm sure they're more prominent in that region. Anybody else? Like, as I mentioned, we have 3 resolutions here. One resolution permits them within the entire township. One breaks up the township, as restricted and permitted areas. As I said, we aren't, and this one restricts them within the entire township. Shane, Joe, are we at all, can we eliminate the partially restricted one from the equation? I mean, we obviously are, we don't have a GIS map prepared, we don't have a metro park system that we wanna keep these out of, Colebrook is pretty consistently, consistent throughout the town, so that leaves us two resolutions, one to permit them for the entire township and one to, restrict them throughout the entire township. And, I, at the beginning of this, not that I ever wanted to see a giant windmill around, but like you, I don't love people telling me what to do with my land, and I was willing to entertain the possibility of development with these. I think as somebody that's elected to represent a town, you have to entertain possibilities that would make people money in your township. However, like I said, after doing more reading about these than I ever thought I would, and after I think I've talked to most of you about these, and dozens of other people. If it came to a vote, I don't know what the vote would be, but I'd have to say it'd be overwhelmingly against these. That's what it's showing. That's what we're seeing, in these township resolutions. And I am somebody that's for landowner rights, but these are a different animal. I don't see benefits for the town beyond the landowners. I see only hindrance for neighbors and other town people. I see issues with them, and that's why at the beginning of this, I was in favor of at least entertaining the possibility of development. As we stand today, I am going to be voting no, and voting to restrict these within Colebrook Township. So, I don't know if that means I make a motion, and I'd like to motion that we pass a resolution dated today that we will be restricting utility scale wind and solar farms in Colebrook Township.
But now, like Terry brought up, they did fix the roads. I don't have a problem with, if they are gonna come here, make sure, as a new trustee, hey guys, we don't mind you in Colebrook, but this is what we would like. If you're gonna do something in Colebrook, this is what we know the people want. Yeah, we don't want, like she said, yeah, some townships or counties didn't do it. Right, I want somebody to stand up.
Well, I think if they were here and we were entertaining these being built, I think we'd get a group of a committee together and we would milk everything out of them we possibly could. You know what I mean? And parquet floor on the gym for some, anything we possibly could agree. I don't think they're interested in the area anymore. And like I said, I do acknowledge that there would be, would be a few benefits with this for the town. I don't think, it's obviously, they were very clear, it's not gonna decrease our energy bills one bit. And it will only, the income will only be for the landowners that signed a contract and generally have a turbine. I think some smaller income for those that they're a pass-through property. But like I said, my decision is based primarily on, I don't know if I talked with 40 or 50 or 60 people, and the overwhelming majority of folks simply just don't want these in our town. And so that's how I have to vote. That's how I'm going to be voting today.
I'm all about that. The electric bill alone, my electric bill during the summer is about $300. I can only imagine what it would be like. Most people burn wood, have electric things that they're here.
Hopefully
The
it has no
electric goes
effect,
up for
yeah.
one day for a craft show. What's that gonna look like now, our community center electric bill? Because everybody's affected by the electric bill. You're just wondering the $600, and that probably could double. Outside of the craft show could be $2,200. But we're paying for it, but not reaping any benefits to what's causing that electric bill to go up. That's just a small portion of it.
There's a lot of hidden items in an electric bill.
Yeah.
James,
At first, I was all for it, I thought it was I don't mind, I don't mind the look, I don't mind the noise, I sleep with the fan and the air conditioner running every night as it is, to have noise, because I can't sleep with it too quiet. And so I don't mind the look, you know what I mean? But if the residents and the community, don't want it, then how are we supposed to say, yeah, let's do this? If a lot of people have come forward that we've talked to, it's all said, they don't like the looks, they don't like the noise, they don't like all that. I don't think that I can actually vote for it, because if they would've just gotten back to, and talked to me, and I could've went out and saw it and went through stuff, they could've probably changed my mind to where I would've voted for it, but at this time, I just can't.
what you said, that I thought he was knowledgeable, but maybe lacked a bit of transparency.
When it came down to the nitty-gritty questions, like I brought up, what's that gonna do if I'm gonna sell my house? Somebody might not buy my house because we're full of turbines. Or if my kids, we're all multi-generational families here with land, and that's the jewel of being where we are. So now you want people to come out to the country. Most people like to go out to the country, but there could be avoiding places that have turbines. That's an eyesore, it's not the country. So to me, I was afraid of my home value, my electric bill, just those things. I wouldn't be able to have them on my property, but it's gonna affect me in a different way.
I know, I forget again where I read it, somebody asked one of our commissioners, and it was JP Dugro that answered the question, and he just said, I honestly, I can't tell you with any certainty what will happen to home values if these are put in your tenants. He didn't say they'll be fine, he knows that there's a chance that they will decrease, he's not an appraiser, he's a funeral director, he owns a funeral home, and he's a business person, he wasn't gonna take a stab and just guess. He's like, it very likely could depreciate.
And I think
If you
people
value
are
your
against
home.
it, not to like control somebody and say, hey, you can't, don't put this on. I think it's to maintain the integrity of where we live.
Yeah.
Because there's hardworking, multi-generational families that have maintained all these years, and now we're just gonna let it go so freely? That, I don't know. I think everybody's best interest is at heart and not in a dictatorship way where they wanna control what you do with your land. It's just thinking about everybody who's put their lives into this area.
And I think that's probably some of the basis behind Senate Bill 52.